Good morning, everyone. I would like to welcome the members of council, staff, and members of the public to our special meeting of council to review the 2024 draft budget and call this meeting to order. I would like to remind council that we will be recorded on the internet, and our goal today is to finish by 3:30 because we've all been through this before. At this time, I'd like to ask Mrs. Pearson to read the disclaimer, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Council members, staff, guests, and members of the public are advised that the Council of the Town of Petrolia meetings are being video and audio recorded and will be posted to the Town of Petrolia's YouTube, along with the official written minutes on our website. As such, comments and opinions expressed may be published, and any comments expressed by individual council members, guests, and the public are their own and do not represent the opinions or comments of the Town of Petrolia as a whole and/or the Council of the Town of Petrolia. The recorded video of the full council meeting shall not be considered the official record of the meeting. The official record of the council meeting shall consist solely of the written minutes approved by council of the Town of Petrolia.
Thank you, Mrs. Pearson. Before I go on, I just wanted to mention that this meeting the 48 hours notice has been provided in accordance with the Town of Petrolia's procedural bylaw. And this agenda was posted on the town website and provided to council at 12 noon on November the 21st. I'd like to ask Mrs. Pearson for the land acknowledgement, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. We acknowledge that this land on which we are gathered today is part of the ancestral lands of the Chippewa, the Ottawa, and the Potawatomi peoples, referred to collectively as the Anishinaabe. The Town of Petrolia is located on the lands associated with the Huron Tract Treaty number 29 of 1827. We express gratitude for the land where we live, work, and play, and we are committed to working respectfully with the land and the Indigenous peoples who have called this land home.
Thank you, Mrs. Pearson. At this time, I'd like to ask Mrs. Pearson, Clerk Operations Clerk, for the roll call, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Councillor Clark.
Present.
Councillor Field.
Present.
And I apologize, Deputy Mayor Field. Councillor Hyatt.
Present.
Councillor O'Hara.
Present.
Councillor Patel.
Present.
Councillor Welsh.
Present.
Mayor Loosely.
Present.
Thank you, Your Worship. We have a quorum.
Thank you. At this time, I would like to request that council declare a conflict of interest now or at the appropriate time and complete the necessary paperwork. Okay, seeing none, I just want to mention on the agenda, you can see we do have some planned session breaks from 10 to 10:20. We'll have lunch from 12 to 12:30 and another one at 2 and 2:20. However, there may be short 5-minute breaks if necessary at the request of council. I'd like to request a mover and a seconder to approve the agenda before you today, please. Moved by Councillor Clark, seconded by Councillor Field. Any discussion regarding that motion? I'll ask the clerk to read that motion, please.
And that is for the agenda to be approved as circulated for the November 28th, 2023 draft 2024 budget session.
All those in favor? Opposed? That motion carries. And consideration of previous minutes, there are none. We'll move now to the number 8 draft budget presentation. And I have a few comments as my opening remarks. I would like to welcome again council and staff and especially residents to our budget deliberations for 2024. This is an important day with a lot to absorb, to work as a team in a professional and courteous manner. It has been another busy year, and I would like to thank Mr. Charlebois, CAO Treasurer, and staff for preparing the 2024 draft budget. Council will have seen the staff are recommending a 1.5% increase to our municipal tax rate that I am very pleased with, and 3% to our water rates and our sewer rates. Even though our economy is recovering, there is still much work to do, and we need to remain flexible. To support our economy recovery, there has also been much discussion by our provincial and federal governments on new capital grant programs to help municipalities with the reopening of the economy. The Town of Petrolia is well prepared with shovel-ready projects to respond to any new grant programs that are introduced. Again, I would like to thank Mr. Rick Charlebois, CEO Treasurer, and his team for coming in with this proposed 1.5% increase and 3% towards water and sewer rates. That still includes a number of major projects within our town. I feel that, in my opinion, the town is blessed with some new assessment growth this year, even though development has slowed down. This budget does not include any possible new growth next year that may go on the tax roll for part of the year. The town is projecting it coming in with a small surplus at the end of 2023. And for your information, a 1% mill rate or a 1% increase in taxes is approximately $64,000. With the increase in assessment dollars, any new development next year will result in an increase in revenue plus the 1.5% increase. I am very pleased to state that we have no planned debenturing in this budget and that our debt has been reduced from 11.7 million to 6.5 million in 2023 and still completing major capital work. So I'm very pleased with that. We will go through each budget, and I will ask council to raise your hand for any questions, changes, or clarification as we go. It is very important for council to be aware of what we are approving today. Please remember the figures we see are up until the end of October, with still a number of bills to come in for the next 2 months. Also, please note that this is the municipal portion of your taxes and does not include the county or Board of Education. Any cuts or additions agreed upon will be approved by a motion of council at that time and a motion at the end as amended. Now I'd like to turn this meeting over to our CAO Treasurer to take us through our draft 2024 budget. Mr. Charlebois.
Thank you, Mayor Leafley. Do we have the presentation up, please, Annette? Next slide, please. Yes, this with the new technology, it's different than we've done in the past with everybody at a table. You can see everybody, so it's a little different. We'll see and we'll adjust if we need to adjust or look at how we do next year's. Okay, so this is the agenda for the presentation part of the day. I have a few opening comments. We have already had the mayor's opening comments. Talk about what I call the bottom line slide, and then some financial background information. Then we'll go through water, sewer, and town general, all the other stuff. And then Larissa will summarize the 150 celebrations and respond to any questions. And then we'll have some closing comments by the mayor and me. So the first point under there's ask questions, full transparency. Yeah, please don't hesitate to ask any questions. Annette's got our large Excel spreadsheet that goes back to 2013, I believe. So we can go back as far as you want on any item. Don't hesitate to ask any questions. Team sport. There's not much that happens in the town where the whole management team isn't involved in some way or another. So it's very much a team sport. And also team sport, I would also include council. So we get council direction, direct and indirect throughout the whole year that helps us put together the following year's budget. What you see in front of you is our best advice based on what we know as staff, but we're more than willing to adjust the budget to whatever council decides. Next slide, please. This is a short, about a 3-minute video on how a municipal budget works. Does anybody want to see it? You may have seen it already, or we can skip that. Anybody like us to run through it? No?
I'm good, thank you.
You're good? Okay. Sure, we'll go to the next slide then, please. It's a good little video put out by the Ontario Municipal Finance Officers Treasurers. Next slide, it's a quote from a former U.S. Secretary of the Treasury. The budget is not just a collection of numbers, but an expression of our values and our aspirations. I think that sort of summarizes what a real budget is. It's not just a bunch of numbers, although the bottom line numbers definitely do matter, but it's all the decisions behind those numbers that are key. The annual budget, I usually refer to it as sort of a short-term strategic plan, marching orders from council to staff, things we want to accomplish over the next year. Next slide, please. So it's still a draft, the council strategic plan for 2024 and 2028. It's coming to council on the 11th of December for approval. And there's our vision, and that's our and the mission, the new vision and new mission. Okay, the next slide. So here's our values, and these values will be included in our reports to council throughout the period of this strategic plan. Staff will be relating back to these values. Next slide. It's development charges. As council is aware, we're doing a development charge study right now. And just so the key about development charges, it's collecting fees from developers for the cost of infrastructure or capital. So it's public infrastructure that's needed to enable the development to happen. Stuff usually outside of their development area. The concept is growth pays for growth. We don't currently have development charges, and this is probably a higher percentage now. But when I put this slide together a few years ago, did a DC course, it was 75% all municipalities in Ontario over 5,000 had development charges. Next slide, please. And if there's any questions at all, I can't, my virtual vision's not as good as a cat, but if someone just wave or.
I will watch Mr. Charlotte
Okay,
for you.
thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Okay, the next part is what I call the bottom line slide. Next slide, please. Okay, here's some history from 2019 to 2023 this year. So the top line is the composite rate. So as the mayor was saying, so that's the lower tier, the upper tier, which is the county, and the education rate. So that's our history. And during COVID, especially for the new members of council, council was very focused on trying to keep our rates as low as we could because of the financial impacts of COVID, and nobody really knew how long COVID was going to last. And hopefully it's over, but it's hard to tell whether it really is over. But those are our rates from the history. Next slide, please. Okay, so for 2024, so we're recommending a 1.5% increase to our lower tier municipal tax rate, a water and sewer rate of 3%. And just wanted to mention that for the CPI, so from the end of August 2022 to the end of August 2023, the CPI for Ontario was 3.8, and the year before that, for the previous year to that, it was 6.8. So inflation has definitely come down, and for the end of October, it was just released CPI for Ontario. Inflation went from 3.8 for September to 3.1 in October. So that's good news. Hopefully means the bank rate or the interest rates aren't going to go up, and we'll start seeing things turn around. But there's still a lot of uncertainty in the world, not to mention there's two conflicts in the world, the Ukraine and in Gaza and Israel, both of which could easily develop into a major regional conflict and hopefully not into anything bigger than that. But if that happens, that would have a huge impact on our economy. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, some important financial background information. Next slide. Thank you. The next several slides, I can stop wherever you wish to go through, but it shows our standard process for doing our annual budget. The key thing to get out of this, we just don't come to work one day and spend half an hour and get the budget ready for the next year. There's a lot of thought and process put into this, and it's evolved over, well, since I got here. There wasn't any process that I knew of, and then there's nothing for me to read from or learn from. So we evolved it from about a little over 10 years ago to where we are now. I think we have a fairly mature and well-established process, but that's our process. Okay. I just wanted to also explain, I'm both the CAO and the treasurer, as you well know. So the role of the treasurer is to create and maintain the financial management control framework. So make sure the processes are there. That's the treasurer's role, and the CAO's role, also my role now, is to make sure that the whole municipality follows those processes. Wanted to explain that a little bit. Yeah, oh, that's great. So on the 28th of November, which is today, we're having our first council meeting, and we can have another one or as many as we need. If council needs more time to go through the budget. December 11th, I'll give a public presentation just before council meeting, the 11th of December. And then on the 11th of January, 2024, that's when we'll bring the final budget to council for seek approval. Some of the key dates. And can we go to the end of slide 16, please? Thank you. So as you're all aware, we have what we call a long-term capital and financial plan. It's got a 10-year planning horizon. Councillor Hyatt saw it up close there a week or so ago at the sewer part. And that evolved to the last 10 years or so. Let's see, and asset management planning, there's a regulation, which just basically means it's a law. So we did our asset management update. Council approved it this past March. So for July of 2024, we're supposed to have all our municipal assets in there. Until now, the minimum requirement was to have our big assets, roads, water, and sewer. But we've started from the start with all our assets, except for the ones we sort of missed and we found as we were getting better at it. And then July 2025, that's where we want municipalities in Ontario to get bigger into service levels. Like, what are our current service levels, and does council want to increase them or lower them? That's more complicated. And I did work through that stuff, service levels, with the federal government, and yeah, spend a lot of time, but it's something good actually, because that's what municipalities here is to provide services and to get a better understanding of that. The other key part of that in 2025, they want all municipalities to have financial plans. We've had one was pretty rough though when we first started 10 years ago. So we're already at that stage. So it's service levels that we need to do a bunch of work on. Okay, asset management. So we're right now, and I've explained before, it's where the money is. So 363 million at replacement value for all our assets. One of the main capital grants that we get every year, it's a formula-based, is the Ontario Community Infrastructure Fund, OCIF for short. We don't have our allocation for 2024 yet. Should be out any day, any week. But in 2023, this year, it switched from being based on what's in our financial statements, which is based on historical cost of buying our assets. So in 2023, they based it on our current replacement values. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in 2024, our allocation. We're expecting it to go up some because we now have our council approved our asset management coordinator. So we've been improving the quality of our asset management information.
Yeah, Mr. Charlebois, I'd like to make a comment on that. I think staff and this council should be really pleased with our asset management. I know Mr. Charlebois and I have spoke at several different functions about that, but my understanding, compared to other municipalities, we are far ahead on our assessment management. So good work, staff and council. Thanks, Mr. Charlebois. Carry on. Oh, sorry. Councillor Hyatt.
Thank you, through you. Just a question on how is the new asset management planning coordinating role going?
Should we speak to that,
Yeah,
Mr. Charlebois?
for you, your worship, that's going really well. We've got a Cracker Jack person in Jessica. I think Deputy Treasurer would agree with that. She's very, very bright, very energetic. I don't know if you've all had a chance to meet her yet, but yeah, we'll have to get her up here to present to council. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
And I was going to mention, so the mayor spoke at AMO, I think it's twice now, right?
Twice, yes.
And did everybody on council here see the 3-minute video on asset management in Petrolia? Yeah, it's a good little video. Really shows the town off really well. The mayor's introduces it, and then he's the narrator. But yeah, they only picked, was it 3? 3 in the whole province.
There wasn't very many.
Anyways, it was
I
an
just,
honor.
yeah, thank you, Mr. Charlebois. I want to just add, that was done at no cost to the town of Petrolia as well. So
Yeah.
that was good.
Yeah, AMO paid the whole cost. Yeah.
And there was some clips of the video in the AMO conference.
Oh, correct, yes. Actually, they showed it throughout the conference. People were saying, hey, isn't that Petrolia? Yeah, that's Petrolia. Yes. Yeah,
We were right at the start, so
Yeah.
that was good.
yes. Okay, next slide, please. So the next set of slides covers our various grant programs. The first few up there on this slide are COVID-19 grants, and there were several. Petrolia did quite well in the COVID grant program. The second from the bottom on that slide is the Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund, OMPF. That's our major operating grant that we get. It actually increased to by $37,000 in 2024 to just shy of $920,000. Unless there's any questions, I'll just highlight a couple of key things. On the next slide. Yeah, OSIF. So in OSIF, that's what we just talked about, the Ontario Community Investment Fund. We're still awaiting our allocation. And from 2022 to 2023, our grant actually went down by $86,000. Next slide, please.
Just to make a comment on that, I just want council to be aware that a lot of municipalities do not get the grants that we get. I think council and staff should be very proud of looking at all these grants we've obtained, because it's a lot of work involved with staff to do that, but it really helps us get these jobs done. So Mr. Charlebois, thank you for that.
Thank you. Can you turn to slide 20, please? Okay, top one up there, the large dark blue. This is the Investing Canada Infrastructure Program, Greenstream. So this is our major grant to almost 12 million on a over $16 million replacement of our intake at the water treatment plant. And we haven't spent a lot of money yet, but in 2024, as you'll see in the budget, we start getting into the millions, and then a few years for the next several years after that, there'll be quite a bit of expenditure. Okay, slide 21, please. So the one on the top, that's the Canadian Community Revitalization Fund. That's the grant we got, $700,000 federal grant to help with the new amenities that we're doing at the community center, or the Y. And that's explained in the note there, and also how in budget 2024, you'll see some other capital projects there as well. For that. Okay. Slides. Next slide, please. Yeah, so now we're into applied/applying for grants. So the first one, there's the Federal Housing Accelerator Funds. We applied for that program this past September. It's a $4 billion program. You probably heard it in the news across across Canada. And we were supposed to hear in early November, but now I don't think we'll hear. It's almost December. Don't think we'll hear till January, February, which surprises me because every other news story is on the housing crisis. I'm surprised they're not moving quicker. The federal government's been slowly releasing approvals across the country, but they've been slow. So, and they did the larger municipalities first. So we're under 10,000. We're in that group, of which there's lots of under 10,000. So we probably won't hear anything until after all the larger cities have been announced. The next slide there is emergency preparedness grant, and we submitted for that one last Friday, and that's up 5,000 to 50,000 for the fire hall for the backup generator. Okay, and the next one is the Community Buildings Recommissioning Grant. It's a green municipal fund. We're looking at that to help us with the HVAC at the Y. And the one under that is the greenhouse gas impact retrofit capital projects. The Y, or community center, needs a new roof, estimated rough estimate of about $1 million. So we're looking to see we can apply for that grant as well. Next slide, please. At the top is the Rural Transit Solutions Fund. And that one, the county is actually looking at that. I think when the deputy mayor was on council, they talked about that a little bit. Yeah. So I haven't heard anything lately on that one. I sent them actually some information on this grant program.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead, Councilor Welsh.
Does that have to be applied for through the county, or can we apply for that also on our own?
It'd be a lot easier to go through the county because then it's for the whole area.
Yeah.
But for us to just do our municipality. Yeah. It's better to coordinate through the county. Good point. Actually, maybe the mayor next time.
It's been discussed, and the best is through the county. As you know, there's already a bus that goes from Sarnia to London now. And if you remember, I did speak at county council asking if they would consider stopping at Reese's Corners so that from Don Euphemia and Petrolia, we could all maybe get on it. They stated that they wanted to get it up and running first before they do that. So I'm hoping in the future they'll still maybe consider that.
And yeah, we spoke with Strathroy. They wanted to wait for a year and then COVID hit. And that pushed everything 3 years out. But the bus is up and running now. I think it's for the last year or so. Yeah, but this other grant, the Rural Transit Solutions Fund, I think it's got a lot of potential to get a better transit, because I think the idea there is try and get something local, go around within the county. I think that's the concept. And it was Warwick, I think, that was asking to put it on the agenda 8 months ago, I think, in county agenda.
That's correct, Mr. Charlebois. Also, the college is very interested in having some kind of transportation and the hospital from Petrolia to Sarnia.
Thank you. The next several grant programs are related to the 150th. There's any questions there, or whether Larissa wanted to mention anything, or?
No, fairly
Straightforward.
straightforward, I would say. Yeah.
I could, Mr. Charlebois, just mention the Creative County, that grant system that we are deciding on Thursday afternoon. I do chair that committee, but I will be declaring a conflict of interest on anything related to petroleum. But anyway, those grants will be released, the creative grants. They're going to decide this Thursday and it will go out shortly after. Thank you.
You'll just step back a little bit. Like the reason, especially capital grants are critical to municipalities across the country actually, is that we only get about 8% of all tax revenue, whether it's property tax, income tax, excise tax, HST. Yet municipalities have, I've seen different studies, 60 to 65% of all the public infrastructure. So, so municipalities can't afford to replace, and I would suggest even to adequately maintain their assets without federal and provincial financial help. And these grants, well, I've seen one, I think, one, maybe two in 10 years that were predetermined and weren't competitive. Like they're always competitive, and as the mayor mentioned, it takes a lot of effort to submit. But yeah, that's why the grants are so critical to the success of a municipality. On that slide 24, slide please. Yeah. So Victoria Hall renovations. So we've been talking about this for a few years. For the washroom, accessible washrooms, freight elevator, and people elevator. The VPP has been saving, building up its reserve to help with that, and Larissa's been actively looking for grants. As soon as we get something, we'll be coming back to council. The next one there is the Ontario electric vehicle charging station. As council probably is aware, we have one charging station that belongs to the town across the street. It doesn't work anymore. So we're looking at this to grant. We were hoping the county was going to lead it for the whole county, but there wasn't enough interest. So we're looking at this now to see if we can at least try and get that one fixed. We've had a few people ask about it and when it was going to be fixed. Yeah. Okay, slide 25, please. This one's the Housing Enabling Water Systems Fund, which is kind of interesting. It's for water, but it's for wastewater and farm water as well. It's for them all. So we're awaiting details on that. The province announced it maybe about a month ago. Still no details out, like how to actually apply for it. And the same with the next one, the Provincial Building Faster Fund. And that's a 1.2 billion over 3 years. Sort of mimics a bit the federal housing accelerator fund. And they're it was geared for the municipalities over 50,000 with this new strong mayor authorities. However, they said there would be a carve out for municipalities under 50,000. But we still haven't seen any details on the actual grant program. Next slide, please.
Yeah, Mr. Charlebois, I just want to make one more comment on, because I'm really pleased with those grants, but I want council to be aware. I have encouraged staff to apply for all the possible grants, but I want to make it very clear, nothing happens unless this council approves it to go forward. So even though staff are applying, it doesn't mean we're doing it. But I want to make it clear it comes back to council for our approval before it happens. Thank you.
This slide here. So it's our town general, so not water, not sewer, year-end surplus deficit. And there's, like I've mentioned before, we have one set of books, which is good, but there's two different ways to present the information. One is the way we manage internally with council and with us, which is what this is. And the other is by law, like most organizations, we have to report by the public sector accounting standards. And that's when the auditors come in, they report that way. The big difference is the way we treat assets. Internally, if we pay a bill, even if it's a capital asset, the money's gone. And where in PSAB or accrual accounting, because that asset's going to hang around for 10, 20, actually some of our assets last like 80 years. So you use a chunk of it every year over the useful life of the asset. So Just so there's two ways to present our information. So as you can see, 2012, we had a $156,000 deficit. And then in 2013, that's looks kind of small. You can't really see it, but really did have a $90 surplus that year. And then you can see the surpluses over the last few years. And as the mayor mentioned, it's hard to get a grip on the forecast for the end of the year, because the year doesn't really end till about March, April. But we're forecasting a small surplus. The next slide, please. So this slide here, same thing. So the town, actually, this one is actually the town, because when they do our financial statements, public statements, it's water, sewer, and the town general. It's all put together. And this one you can see is a bigger number. And the main reason is because the assets that we buy are depreciated over time. So the in-year expense is less. Next slide, please. Accumulated surplus. So the note at the top there. So growth in net worth from 2013 to 2022, 69%. Everybody knows what our FIR, our financial information return. It's probably the biggest, most complicated report that municipalities do in Ontario and actually it's across Canada, actually. They've got a system where we can help benchmark ourselves. So we haven't used it much, not like many municipalities do, but we compared, and so the average across Ontario, the 444 municipalities, was 31%. So the 69 divided by the 31. So our growth for those 6 years is actually more than twice, 200% higher than the provincial average. And in theory, what the accumulated surplus is, you hear other terms like net worth. If we sold everything, paid off all our debts, in theory, at the end of we would have a check for $102 million. Or sorry, $102 million. Yep, at the end of 2022. It's a good thing for council to sort of gauge how's our net worth. If our net worth keeps going, if it's going down, it probably, well, it could mean a couple of things, but the most important thing to watch for would be our base assets, because we're not investing in the assets. Yeah.
Councillor Patel, go ahead.
Worship. So what do you attribute to this growth? As
Oh,
far as across the board and a 200% for profit, like what can you attribute that to?
Mr. Schalabach, go ahead.
yeah, great question, Councillor Patel. The main thing is our success at capital grants. It was, it's like if, I don't say my parents give me $1 million, my net worth is going to go up by $1 million just by them giving me $1 million. So by the capital grants that we've had great success on, that translates, so it increases our asset base.
Thank you.
Next slide, please. Transfers to the working capital reserve. And this is both working capital, which means have enough money in the bank to manage the cash flow, because the amount of money in the bank, because of the way our money come in, money going out is up and down. But you want to make sure you have some money in the bank to meet those low points. And also this account we use for capital reserve to pay for capital that's not water, not sewer. So that's for both. And as you can see, from 2013 to over the period to 2022, we've been able to increase the amount of money going to capital reserves, because if we have no money in capital reserves, then basically we don't have any money to purchase or to pay for the capital that we need, and which would mean we'd have to borrow or just not replace the assets. Okay. Next slide, please. This is depicting our grant success from 2012 to 2022. And this is just the approvals. 'Cause some of these projects are multi-year projects, like the one in 2015. We got 14 million. Of that 16.5 million was for the wastewater treatment plant, and that took us, what, about 5 years? It's 6 years to finish. So we actually spend the money over that period. And then 2022, I'll just try 12 million of that 13.6 million. That's our intake grant. That's a federal and provincial grant that we got. Okay. Slide 31, sort of to what the mayor was saying in his opening comments. For 2022 to 2015 to 2022, if you add up all the grant approvals, so it was about a little over 43 million. Our tax revenue at the lower tier for that same period was less than that. So we actually brought in more capital grant money in that period than we actually brought in through tax revenue. And as the mayor was suggesting, like these grants, it's a fair bit of work to do, and to actually bring in. So that means we brought in twice as much money. We spent twice as much money. So it creates a lot of extra work for the staff. Creates a lot of extra work for the pick anybody. But for example, Mike, for the public works type grants, to actually implement these things. So we obviously hire an engineering firm to help us manage the project, but it still creates a fair bit of work for us as staff to stay on it and address. There's always issues with any major initiative. And there's tons of grant reporting and auditing afterwards. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, this slide here, this is our long-term debt. Third column over is what the mayor mentioned, 11.7 million that's our original debt. Some of this debt goes back to 2009, 2012, 2015, and 2 in 2017 for water and for the wastewater treatment plant. And so by the end of this year, we'll be down to 6.5 million, and by the end of 24, pardon me, it'll be down to 5.8 million. Any questions on that part of the debt?
Go ahead.
Next slide, please. Okay, so this slide here, what it's trying to illustrate or point out is, so here's the various grants on the left, or sorry, loans on the left side, and when they come to an end. So if you look at the yellow there, total non-VPP for the town general stuff. So in 2024, we'll be paying out $306,000. That's interest and principal payments. And then in 2025, it's cut in half. And then in 2026, it cuts in half again, and actually cuts in half again in 2027. So by 2028, all our town debt will be paid off and cleared. And we've tried, part of our debt management strategy has been trying not to borrow any debt on the town general stuff, unless the only reason we'd ever borrow debt or recommend to council to borrow is if we needed the money to get to a grant, to get to the free money, which is what we've done for water and sewer, actually. Yeah, and then there's the VPP. That was for their garage next door. I guess they still call it the garage or the storage.
Various names, but.
Various names,
that's about
okay.
right, yes. Thank you.
Yeah. So that'll be good to be free of that debt. And then there's water and sewer, and they go to 2037. And they're 20-year terms. Took that out in 2017. Okay. Next slide, please. So here's the Ontario CPI from 2018 to 2023 and shows the cumulative inflation over that period, 21. Here's our cumulative tax rate of 3%. And the next slide. Thank you. Same thing for water rates, so same cumulative inflation number for Ontario. And then our cumulative water rate is 13.6%. And the next one is for the sewer rates. So the sewer rates from 2018 to 2023, there's a 21.2% for inflation, general inflation, and then 6.6%, negative 6.6% for the cumulative sewer rates. So it's just a way to keep track of where our three main subdivisions of water, sewer, and all the other stuff to compare us to what general inflation is. That's what that's just trying to show. So if it was the other way around and our sewer rates were much higher than inflation, you should be asking staff what the heck's going on. And it could be, like, I know some municipalities, they're finally catching up on especially their water and their sewer, because they have a lot of, even if you're a small municipality, if you have your own water or sewer, they're very capital intense. And if they're not planning longer term, it's probably going to sneak up on them that they need some quick money, or they're going to have to borrow a lot of money to replace some of that capital. Okay. Next slide, please. Next, we'll get into the details of the budget. First one up is the water operating capital. The first line is the revenue for the water. So for Petrolia, it's a 3% rate increase, so a total of 2.4 million. We sell about half our water to Enniskillen, who then turns around and sells some to Donyafemia and some to Oil Springs. So that's all included in that. Operating cost of 1.6 million. The water treatment plant, 837. The booster station, water administration, collection and equipment, just shy of 300,000. The water distribution, that's all the pipes within the municipality, 300,000. So the operating surplus is 888,000, just minus the revenue from the operating cost. And then the capital, Aqua operates our water treatment plant system, and they've recommended for 2024, working with Mike, 143,000 for the water treatment plant, 102,000 for the lab equipment, strainers, the plant process pump and pump motor rebuild, replacement, the Paul membrane, low lift motor rebuild, pump rebuild, and general repairs, chlorine gas system. And then at the Mandomin Reservoir, just 8,000 for some inspections that we need to do. And then the distribution system, 33,000 in valve repair, hydrant repairs, and leak detection system. Did you want to add anything to that, Mike? Nope. Okay. Oh, there you go.
If and when we implement the development charges, that's going to stabilize those rates a little bit better than what we've been doing for the last several years.
Charlotte, do you want to answer that, please?
Yeah, any additional infrastructure that we need because of growth, correct, because someone's going to pay for it. Is it the current residents or the future residents that are moving into this new development, or some combination thereof? The province, if you recall, about a year ago, for development charges, they made a bunch of changes. One of the changes was any development charges that are implemented in the first year of implementation, you can only charge, the municipality can only charge a maximum of 80%. They can go lower than 80, but they can only maximum of 80%. I think that's what the province was trying to do is get a little bit of a combination in the middle of current and future residents paying for this infrastructure. Yeah, and I think it's a 5-year, yeah. Yeah, so you're right, if there's infrastructure that's required and we can't charge the developers directly, even without development charges, then you're right, the town's got to find the money.
Stabilize the rates a little bit more if we are getting funding from development charges.
I would say
That
that,
the town residents aren't paying for everything.
right, I'd say it the other way, in that if we don't have development charges and there's infrastructure that we need to enable the growth, if we can't get that from the developers, like actually, it is going to happen if we have development charges, because 20% of it isn't going to come from the developers. It's going to come from the current ratepayers, whether it's water, sewer, or other stuff.
Correct me if I'm wrong too, Mr. Charlebois, there are conditions on low housing where we cannot charge development fees. So there's,
Yes.
okay,
Yeah.
all right,
For affordable housing.
affordable housing.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Councillor O'Hara.
Well, this is for another day, but how is affordable housing defined?
Yeah, that's been a question the last year or so at the provincial level. If I remember correctly, 'cause we don't do social housing at lower tier. It's all the county, but when we applied for the half grant, I got to learn some stuff. I think it's the percent of your gross income, no more than a certain percent of your gross income being towards the cost of accommodations. So if I'm below that threshold, then I don't get any subsidized or affordable housing. But if I'm spending more, if I'm spending 60% of my income on housing, then I qualify for affordable housing. However, as I found out doing the half research, Petrolia's got twice as high. We were 5% of the population of the county, and but we've got 10% of the families that are on the affordable housing list.
That's not exactly what I meant, though. That's for a person applying for it. But if somebody's building a house, who determines if that house is gonna be in the affordable or not?
Oh, yeah, and this, I said, we don't physically see any of that stuff. However, the way it's been explained to me that it works, and the county will put out an RFP and say, we need to do affordable housing in, say, Petrolia. We want a 30-unit affordable housing, and then developers apply to the RFP. And whoever has the best deal, that's who gets it.
Not exactly what I still.
Oh, no, oops, sorry.
We'll do this another day. Okay?
Okay.
Let's do the budget to
I
that.
think if I can, that basically the county approves that. We don't. So, all right, carry on, Mr. Charlebois, please.
Slide 39, please. Yep. So the other capital water projects, Holland and Derby, top coat, 15,000. The intake, so we're estimating $2 million of expenditures, capital expenditures in 2024, of which we'll get about 1.5 million, 73% of the grant. We're not able to get the cash or the grant until we actually have invoices, and then we process it through the province. So a net of just over 500,000 for the intake. The band shell, that's just the water portion of the band shell, the 150th legacy project. And then the Petrolia line, water main upsizing. We have to increase the size of the main line on Petrolia line, and there's various options there, but we're thinking that it should be cost neutral, whether it's through development charges, although it'll charges, or some of these grants that we mentioned that we'll apply for, but that's still evolving. Did you want to mention anything about that, Mike, or?
Oh.
Forgetting? Oh.
Mike, no, okay, sorry. Counselor Welsh, go ahead.
We are on Petrolia line.
Through your worship, the existing water mains on the north side of Petrolia Line runs from the creek at the flats all the way to 21 Shell. So that's the line that needs to be upsized for fire flows and capacity in that southeast section where all those developments are. And then any potential growth to a commercial development at that end of town as well. So yeah, that's what it is. We have an engineer working on a proposal as we speak. Probably come to council in the new year. It's quite involved. It's a big job, but yeah, it's needed.
Okay with that, Mrs. Welsh? Okay, Counselor O'Hara.
Is that in the street, that water line, or is it off the?
Off the side, yeah.
For your worship to Councilor O'Hara, it's on the north of the curb.
Thankfully.
Yeah, it's in the boulevard. So they'll, I mean, it's as opposed to any other reconstruction, it'd be storm or whatever, but this project would just be water itself.
Okay.
Temporary water main because that water main obviously feeds both sides of Petrolia Line, so there'd be temporary water main and what have you, and there'll be some exploratory hydrovacing right off the get-go because our records are sparse in town hall, so we got to figure out where everything is, and there'll be a proposal coming in the new year.
Okay, Counselor O'Hara, thank you, Mr. Thompson. Okay, Mr. Charlebois.
Good, thank you. Next is on slide 39, yep. The bottom line, so the transfer to the water reserve would be 161,000. So that's just the operating surplus minus the capital program. Do not anticipate any loans. The water reserve. So the water reserve, yeah, oh, did make it there. Okay, water reserve is $1.3 million at the end of 2022, the last time we were audited. And it's because we're saving for the intake. Okay, and then just a few lines about the intake. I think you've seen all that before. And it was a joint project that we did with MSCL and Donyafemi and Oil Springs, which also helped us get $12 million grant. And you wanted to add?
No,
Water.
we're having a meeting tomorrow afternoon with Aqua and SEMA. They have a preliminary design for the intake, and we're going to go over some things tomorrow. So hopefully it's out for tender spring, late spring. So we can get going on it, but it's a big project. It's overwhelming, but it's one thing building a wastewater treatment plant basically in the middle of nowhere or a booster station, but this is obviously on the beaches of Brights Grove, and it's going to be interesting. So to get that pipe put together, or however they're going to stage it and get it out so many meters in the lake. So
Good thing is, I don't know if it lasts longer, but the current one had a useful life of 80 years. We're just sort of past that now. So we won't have to do this again for another 80 years. And I think most of the councillors would have stepped down by then. Yes.
Counselor O'Hara, do you have a comment?
Just through you, your worship, is it the new intake? I know is it going to be a plastic intake or is it going to be?
I think I'll probably find out tomorrow. It's either going to be cement or poly, fused together poly pipe. So, yeah, the engineers will figure that out, and they've talked to a couple contractors what might be best, but we'll find out more tomorrow.
Okay.
Counselor Wells, do you have a comment?
I'm just wondering if SEMA has done this kind of project before.
I believe so. South of Kingsville and Lake Erie, I believe they had a project like this, or they were involved with one. But yeah, there's not too many of these around.
Okay, Counselor Welsh.
I think it was,
All right.
sorry,
Oh,
sorry.
go ahead.
I think it was actually an intake for the greenhouses,
Oh,
I believe, down there. So it's same but different kind of thing.
Okay, I'll just go to Counselor Patel and then we're going to break. Counselor Patel, go ahead.
In relationship to your worship, the conversation that you're going to have tomorrow between the poly and the cement, is it a longevity factor or a cost factor in choosing one over the other?
I think potentially both and maybe not more. Not exactly sure right now, but we've gone through a lot of studies, a lot of consultation over the last 6 to 8 months. So I'll get a better idea tomorrow, but I can follow up with council if you wish.
And through you, your
Yeah, I
worship, so
think that, just to jump in, that would be a good idea, and Mr. Thompson, just to let us know whether it's going to be concrete or pipe, that'd be great.
and whether either product would be more repairable in the long term compared one or the other, whether that longevity piece would be something that could be repaired rather than replaced. Pro or con on either. route.
I'll have to ask the engineers. Yeah.
Okay, Councilor Patel, go ahead, Mr. Charlebois.
Yeah, I was just gonna add, so any contracts over 25,000, these would be multi-million-dollar contracts, will come back to council to seek approval before we award any contracts. And that'll be a good time for us to maybe have SEMA here and actually give a little presentation on like all those kind of questions. Yeah, a good question.
That's good. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Charlebois. That's a great idea. All right, we'll break now till 10:20. Please be on time. We want to keep things moving. Thank you. Break.